Good evening. My name is Kelly Carroll. It is 6:05 on Thursday, October 17th. This is Bennington's Community Policing Advisory Review Board. We are located in the third floor of the Bennington Firehouse on River Street in Bennington. My name is Kelly Carroll, and I have the pleasure of chairing this board, and I will ask everyone to introduce themselves.
My name is Lindsay Brilliant.
Jeff Vickers.
Kate Cost.
Scott Frost.
Jean Connor.
And we also have Lee with us from CAT TV. Before we get into approving the agenda and everything, I'm going to veer off a little bit, and I apologize for breaking protocol. But this week, we lost a very, very important member of our, I would call extended town family, Jim Vyers from CAT TV. And it's very, Lee is fantastic, and so is Josh, but it's unusual to be here and to not see Jim. And Vicki Lamprin wrote a couple of words, and I just wanted to echo this. Jim gave so much to Bennington. Jim was instrumental in developing the CPARB board and his dedication with his work on the Charter Review Committee. He loved being a part of our beautiful town and served tirelessly in many ways. Jim left big shoes to fill, but I am confident that as a community we can honor him in continuing his work. Rest easy, my brother of choice, we got this. And that was from Vicki Lamprin. And I just wanted to say that I echo that. And he will be very, very missed, and our condolences go out to his family. So, and then on that note, I'm going to ask Scott Frost to read our town vision statement, please.
Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, and resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life.
Thank you, Scott. So for purpose of discussion, could I get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, opposed, abstain? So passed. Distributed for the purposes of discussions were the meeting minutes from the previous month's meeting. So for a purpose of discussion, can I get a motion to discuss those?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Are there any changes to the minutes that were passed out? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve minutes from last meeting.
I second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay, so be it. Next on our agenda is the public comment session, and we did not have anybody sign up. So before we go on to the BPD update, is there anybody else that would like to speak? Then I would like to introduce Chief Doucette. And I do understand that we had some compliments that are somewhere lost in interoffice mail. So I will try to get those for the next meeting.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's, we need to learn about where that mailbox is and where my administrative assistant put those for you. And she's on vacation this week, so I apologize for that. But we certainly do get far more compliments than complaints, and I'd love to. Maybe it's because I'm short. How's that? Is that better? Yes. Thank you very much. So with that being said, just a few things to bring you up to speed on. Tonight we look around this room and oh my goodness, there's desk space, there's car seats all over the place. Lieutenant Grandy's car seat from when he was a child is over there against the wall, the Batman one. And we are very pleased and proud to say that Lieutenant Grandy worked hard to get a car seat safety technician class here in the southern part of the state. And our folks that actually teach that class are here, and they're staying locally. And we have, at the Bennington Police Department, we have 4 students enrolled in this class. And it just goes along with our community policing theme. Once they complete the program and become certified, we'll be able to host our car seat classes, at car dealerships or, at different events that are held in the Bennington community. So we're very pleased about that. And again, the state is bearing the cost of this training. So we're very happy about that. I did bring you all up to speed. Stark's getting ready to go back to training. K9 Stark, we just came from the BBC. Lieutenant Grandy and I did, getting ready for Harvest Fest this coming Saturday. The weather's going to be beautiful, and they wanted to know if our canines would be there. And Officer Morowski and Gracie will swing by, but Stark and Officer McCauley are off during the day, so we won't see them. And as I told everyone that was at the BBC meeting, there was quite a few people there. We just still need to be careful while Stark remains in training. We don't want him to be overly friendly yet. And we're asking that people refrain if they see Officer McCauley and Stark, from bending over and saying, "Oh, you're so cute," And so I just wanted to bring you all up to speed on that he's getting ready to go back to finish his 5 weeks that he has remaining. And on the police end, we're working on budgets for fiscal year 2026 so that we can present those to the town manager and the finance director. And then they'll move on, and we'll be here probably the first weekend in January. I'm going to bring Lieutenant Grandy with me and let him do a little bit of work this year with the budgets and present a little bit to the select board for the upcoming fiscal year 2026. And so those are some of the key things that we have going on at the police department, and that's the update so far. Does anybody have any questions?
I hope that you'll be putting in increase to salaries. I know. I know.
Yeah, listen, and I appreciate that. We have an amazing staff with, what we have left. I mean, we have 5 vacancies. We do have a working agreement that we are bound by. We're really getting a lot of positive feedback from the community about our people being a little underpaid as compared to, other communities. And that's something that I need to really talk with the town manager about. And we really need to convince the select board of things like that. We really are, it's going to be public record. We really need to alleviate some of the burden on the administrative staff as well. I think it's time that we ask the community to support an analyst at the Bennington Police Department to pull data. And I don't want to get too deep into that right now. We go to a lot of data-driven meetings, and people want to know all about that. And it's just something right now, it's the chief and the lieutenant and a communication specialist drawing down data. We do have an analyst for drug crimes and things like that. That is, that we don't, the town of Bennington does not pay the salary for that person, but that's completely different than what we're trying to do with our BenStat meetings and our Project Alliance meetings. And so I do appreciate that. I think there needs to be a little more money in there for community policing events as well. And so those are little things that we're going to work on and just present that, answer our questions from the select board, and then hopefully the voters will approve the budget. It's not as simple as saying, well, let's approve the police budget and not the budget for this other department. And I don't think I would want that as a department head. I mean, we're all one group. We all work together to try to satisfy people through teamwork. And there's a lot of great people that work for the town of Bennington that are deserving also. So I really think that that's something that we can consider, but that might be really when it comes to salary, the working agreement kind of covers that with the exception of a few people at the police department. We just have to, the other thing too, Kate, is got to make sure that we're keeping the benefits that were just provided to us 2 years ago. I mean, we worked a long time without dental and vision, and I know people think that that's unheard of, but we got to make sure that we maintain those benefits. I don't know anybody that's not providing, in the law enforcement world, that's not providing those benefits to their employees. And I get it. There's a cost with everything. Healthcare costs have gone up dramatically, and we ask the taxpayers to absorb that. And again, but then there are other law enforcement agencies not too far from here that don't pay anything for their health insurance. Mm-hmm. And we as employees do pay that, and I wouldn't change that. I think that there should be some type of buy-in, from the individual employee. So. But again, I appreciate your comment, and I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Well, I guess with that, you've talked in the past where you've had, you were under your desired staffing level. So I guess a two-part question, are you fully staffed now? Mm-hmm. And is there money in the budget for recruiting and retaining officers?
So we are not fully staffed. We're still down 5. Our latest officer is Christopher Miller. He came to us as a level 3 certified law enforcement officer. We, like many other police agencies in the state, are having a hard time drawing people. Some agencies are raising their salaries or enhancing their benefits. And those are things that we're going to have to start considering. Rutland Police Department offered incentives for people to remain on staff. And I think that's something, we have to do something to reward our employees that are working diligently to keep this community safe. And I don't want to get too deep because I don't have all of the stats right here in front of me, but I have to share with you that, in 2021 and 2022, just a few years ago, we were very nervous in this community about all of the violent crime that was happening. And through the work of the members of the Bennington Police Department and our federal partners, and with some strict prosecution, both at the state and federal level, we've curbed that. And we're very proud of that. But we have to keep the pressure up, Jeff, if we're going to keep pushing that crime away. And so I think that's something to consider, is the amount of work that's being done, and we have to find ways to be able to recruit and retain. And we have the opportunity to go off to college fairs. We've looked at Indeed. If you go tonight, if you go on Indeed and you type in 05201 police, you're getting advertisements out of Massachusetts. You're getting advertisements on the other side of our mountain to the east. And it's definitely a challenge, especially when you stop and look at some of the private security companies that are offering $40 an hour. And I'm not saying we should be paying $40 an hour. We're in the like $26 an hour starting pay range. And it really is not enough when you stop and look at some of the private sector jobs that are out there that are paying far more money.
It seems to me, over time, I'm getting the impression, and I don't know if it's accurate or not, but it seems to me that, well, I guess one part of it is definitely accurate, that there seems to be more of a focus on community policing and the police being involved in community events. And it seems that it is being asked officers to volunteer their time off and to do these things, which, if it's already hard to draw people in, and then on top of it, they're being asked to volunteer their time, I think that would be a hard thing to ask for or sustain. It just seems to me that if your calls are up and you're being asked to do other things to interface with the community, which I think they're both important, how, without more people and or more money, I don't know how you do all those things long term.
Yeah,
It'll burn people out.
Like if you use the month of October as an example, the number of trunk or treat events, for example, that we have on the board, and I'm not going to give you our theme because I want it to be a surprise, but we are prepared to participate in trunk or treat events, and those are volunteer. The staff loves to come out and do things like that. What we don't care for is when you come up to me and I'm enrolled in a costume and you know who I am and you start talking to me about your neighbor's dog barking or your neighbor's chickens in your yard and things like that, that's frustrating to my staff because we're volunteering our time to go out and do fun things in the community. And I think that's something that turns the staff off. And now if I'm working a Mayfest event or a Harvest Fest event, or I'm on a traffic stop and you want to talk to me about your issues, that's fine. But I think when the officers are volunteering their time or the communication staff is volunteering their time, we need to be cognizant of that. And people need to let us do the fun things that we're there for. And it's not just that. These trunk or treat events, it's the officers and the civilian staff, communication staff. We're paying for all the treats that are going out. That's not funded by the town, and I'm not saying the town should fund candy because I don't want any hate mail on that. But the thing is, there's a lot of things that my staff does, and we filter money every week out of our paychecks into the Bennington Police Association, and the association will cut the check when Lieutenant Grandy goes down and loads up the Walmart shopping cart with candy. And and we pay for all of that out of our pockets. And, I think that's what differentiates us between, other town staff or perhaps other police departments is that we, every week money comes out of your check, it goes into this account, and that's how we pay for things. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into this. Lieutenant Grandy knows we're already working on our bicycle event for May of 2025. And it takes a lot of planning and it takes a lot of donations. So we're already working that because I'm super excited to tell you that we're going to hand out a lot of free bicycles, during that event, through a raffle. You don't have to buy the raffle ticket, but there's all these things that we're planning. And it's difficult to beg all the time. And so those are little things that we have to think about. When I said we need a little more money for community policing events, instead of going and asking for, my staff to come together and go to a local restaurant and do protect and serve so that we can raise the $2,000 that we need to buy bicycle helmets, there's got to be a different way of doing that, because where we fall short in that, the money comes out of the police association account. And it's just little things like that. And I'm glad you brought it up, and I don't want to go down the path too far, but I do have, I'm going to say it again, I have a lot of dedicated people that will volunteer their time, but it's tough to volunteer your time and also pay for everything that you need to make that event happen. And that seems to be what we do, and we've been doing it for, the 30, almost 5 years that I've been here. It's always you give, and but it's important.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to say that I appreciate that the officers volunteer their time, but I also worry about the liability if somebody gets hurt volunteering their time. And I realize that trunk or treat might be a little bit of a out of the box example on that, but that would be and again, I appreciate them volunteering their time, but I do, worry about the wellness safety part if something were to happen, because they would probably still react and do their job.
Yeah, no, that's a valid point. We worry about it sometimes when we ask people to volunteer and you're doing a few tricks on your bicycle or whatever to try to be impressive with the kids, and what if the officer falls and breaks his arm? Is it Blue Cross Blue Shield paying for that, or is it the Vermont League of Cities and Towns? So those are little things that we worry about sometimes as well. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Any other questions before we?
Move on to the next agenda item with the complaints that were received.
Okay. May I step away for just a minute? I just want to make sure I'm able to answer any questions.
Do you want to review the first one for us? IA 0012024.
Sure. IA 0012024 involves a complaint about false detention as well as unprofessional conduct. It was a complaint received from a business owner in Bennington that felt that an officer was sitting across the street waiting for patrons to leave the establishment that serves alcohol. Upon investigation, it was determined that the officer that had been sitting across the street was there because of the situation at a residence across the street, and was not the same officer that was involved in the traffic stop a little while later. Come to find out, the officer that was involved in the traffic stop stopped the vehicle for what we call a condition of vehicle violation or an equipment violation. During the traffic stop, the officer did observe the odor of alcohol, did the proper procedure in asking the person to perform sobriety tests, also exited the vehicle and showed the officer, without the officer even asking, and showed the officer the muffler in the back of their vehicle that was not attached to the vehicle like it was supposed to be. And so the officer conducted a lawful traffic stop, issued the proper paperwork on the traffic stop, was not sitting outside of the business to look for people that were leaving the business. And we learned that the person that had been stopped by the officer called the establishment and reported to another patron there that the police were stopping cars. And I'm assuming in an attempt to warn them that the police were active and not to drive while impaired. So based on that information, this was investigated, and the officer was exonerated based on the fact that it was a lawful traffic stop. The action or activity did occur, but it was not unprofessional, and it was not an unlawful detainment of someone because they had been at an establishment that serves alcohol.
Okay. Before I ask the board if there's any questions, is there anyone on the board that needs to recuse themselves from the discussion on this one? Okay, are there any questions for the chief?
I don't have a question, but just a general, reading through these, especially the longer ones, is there any way, instead of XX being substituted for each individual, which sometimes it gets a little confusing which XX, could you use different letters or some other XX1 or XXYY, whatever it is, to differentiate the individuals in the report, just so it's easier to follow, or is that hard to do?
I don't think it's hard to do with the computer program. The other piece that Lieutenant Randy and I talked about today is simply just to redact information using a black marker, so that the XX, because when you get into the ones that are a little more lengthy, not that there's a lot of them, but when you get into one that's a little more lengthy, like the one we'll discuss here shortly, it was confusing for me as well. I mean, I knew the situation, but it was a little bit confusing for me as well. So I apologize for that.
Not your fault, no.
I think that moving forward, we'll try just blacking out things and then printing it that way.
Okay.
Okay? And we'll see if that makes a difference.
Cool.
I think that's what you did on the first couple, and it seemed to work out pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I tried something new this time to make it look like it was a little more professional other than a black marker. I mean, this is we had one last year, and, we have a few tonight, but, there's a lot of redactions to protect the names of people. So, so yes, the short answer is yes, we'll try something different.
Okay, so any questions on this one before we move on? Jean?
Yeah, I have a question, and please tell me if any of my questions are inappropriate, because I'm new to this board, so I don't want to overstep. But I'm just curious if body cam footage was part of the investigation?
For this first one?
This one?
Yes.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Can we go to number 3 next, because that's a short one?
Yes.
Okay. IA 00324.
Yes, number IA 00324 involves a complaint of unprofessional conduct and discrimination. This incident involved a Bennington Police Department member that was detailed to a local facility here in Bennington. There was some misbehavior at that facility by the complainant, and a member of the security department at this establishment asked the Bennington Police Department member to ask that person to leave as they were being disruptive in the waiting room. The complaint revolved around the officer as well as the hospital security staff, and but based on the review and the body camera footage and speaking to the officer involved and the security team, it was felt that the person that was creating the problems was being asked to leave. It is private property. There was no force used by a member of the Bennington Police Department. The person was asked to leave the property, made some vulgar comments when it was time for them to leave the property, and we actually had some discussion as to why the person was not charged with disorderly conduct. But in this particular case, it was felt that it was best for the person to just leave the property, and then that establishment took care of what needed to be done, and a notice of trespass was issued. So on this complaint, the officer was exonerated. The request to remove the person from the facility was correct, and the officer's actions, he was very polite and very cooperative to the individual and acted within his official duties as a member of the Bennington Police Department. Again, just to save time, the body camera footage was reviewed, as well as the policy for the establishment on visitation, and it was felt that the officer acted appropriately and was exonerated from the complaint.
Does anyone need to recuse themselves from this one before we discuss? No. Any questions for the chief?
Chief Doucette, this isn't a specific question for this complaint, but do you have any idea of the rate of calls that you get for removals from the hospital?
We're not asked to remove a lot of people from the hospital, but people that have inappropriate behavior, use foul language, try to bring things into the emergency department that don't belong in the emergency department, as an example, or even up to women and children's.
Yeah.
And if they're asked to leave by a member of the security team, they have to leave. And if they don't leave, that's when the police get called. So we do respond to the hospital frequently to deal with combative patients and things like that. But it's not very frequent that we respond up there to remove, unruly people or that, are not following the visitation rules. In all fairness, I would say it's not often. It's usually someone with, a mental health issue or someone that just needs someone to talk to. And as you know, my staff is very well trained in mental health first aid, and they can be very helpful to the hospital staff. So the short version is, it's not a lot, and when it does happen, trespass notices are issued, and that's within the parameters of what the hospital would like to do. And to go a little further with that, Lieutenant Randy and I do sit on the workplace violence team with the staff at the medical center. We have 30-minute meetings. That's what I love about the hospital so much, is they are 30 minutes done. And so, you know, I think it's important that we realize that the hospital is a huge asset to this community, and we need to keep the doctors and nurses and staff safe, as well as the security team up there. So when they call, we respond and we take care of the problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on this one? Okay. Then can we go on to IA 00224? This was the one that was a little hard to follow.
Yeah.
So IA 00224 involves two members of the Bennington Police Department. The original complaint was abuse of authority, failure to complete a thorough investigation, and failure to follow policy, and that the officers acted unprofessionally. In this particular case, without going into a lot of details, it involved a custodial issue where a person wanted to have visitation with their child on Father's Day, produced a court order. The officer interpreted the court order and made some phone calls in an effort to assist someone with having visitation with their child on Father's Day. There was a question as to whether or not this could have been a custodial interference case, criminal case. And there was some wording about could be arrested. The video shows that the officer did not say you will be arrested. So it was a two-part complaint because one of the people involved that made the complaint felt that the officer was a little overbearing and unprofessional, and then at the same time the officer he wanted to file a complaint about the officer. The officer was the complainant did go to the police department and attempt to file that complaint, and the supervisor on duty did not get back to the individual. A lengthy period of time elapsed, and the person filed a complaint. In this particular complaint, we found that the supervisor did not respond appropriately to the complainant and did not take the complaint as required by our policy. And in that particular case, we found that the officer didn't respond appropriately, and we did take action against the officer as far as discipline, review of policy, and retraining. So that complaint was sustained, and the other complaint against the officer that was trying to handle the case initially, upon lengthy review of this case and court documents and speaking with the state's attorney's office, it was found that that officer acted appropriately, and so the activities did happen, but it was within the scope of his duties, and so he was exonerated from this complaint. So it was twofold. That's why this one was lengthy. So we did find and sustain one complaint, and the other was exonerated.
Before we discuss, is there anybody that needs to recuse themselves? Okay. Are there any questions for the chief? Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody in the audience that has any questions? No. Okay. Thank you. Next up on the agenda, we have electronic control devices.
So I'd like to introduce you to Detective Sergeant Jason Burnham. He's going to give you a brief presentation on our electronic control devices. I would ask if it's okay with CAT TV and all of you, if we can move Detective Sergeant Burnham a little bit closer to you. He is excellent with an electronic control device, and he's very safe. So you have no fears there. But all kidding aside, we'd like to get them a little bit closer. And I think it would be easier for Cat TV as well, if that's okay. So can you just give me a second? We're going to move this a little bit closer. Yeah, can you help us?
Yeah.
Good evening. Chief said, Jason Farmer, Detective Sergeant for the Police Department. I'm a taser instructor for the department, which means you have to go every other year to be recertified by Axon, as the parent company of Taser. Axon manufactures all kinds of equipment, from tasers or body cameras to lots of devices that some new devices will link together. For instance, if you turn a taser on, you don't already have your body camera activated.
And I'll turn
It will activate your body camera. The cameras in the car, and anybody else's. If we had cameras that linked together, you turn this on, mine would come on, the chiefs would come on, the lieutenants would come on. Kind of puts out a bubble. This is our model we carry, is called the X20. We carry it on the, so we carry it on the opposite side. This came off my duty belt. So it would be what we call cross draw to differentiate it from the pistol, which is on your dominant side. To draw, you would cross over. This is like one of those ingrained training points, which is why everything kind of flows in together, but we never carry our pistol cross-draw, plain clothes, anything like that. We don't do it because this, in your head, this is, and you never want to mistake one for the other. You want to look for training, or sorry, not training videos, but videos of officers down south or all across the country mistaking one for the other. It's a training point. Ours, I'm going to take it out. This is what it looks like. There's a cartridge in the front. You have to check these daily. Prior to your shift, you're supposed to check them. To take the cartridge out, we don't put our hands in front. So the probes come out. This is called the cartridge. These little green things, there's two doors, they're called blast doors. There's two probes in there with 24 feet of copper wire coiled up for each one. There isn't a cartridge in the taser now. So for instance, if somebody was to put their hand in front of where the blast doors are to take it out, turn on and test it too soon, put the probes in their hand by accident. There's always, every year we recertify on the taser. There's a slide in the PowerPoint of an X-ray with somebody's hand with two probes in it, and it just kind of drives it home. Never in front, always from the top or the bottom to take it out and test it. Like I said, before each shift, officers are required to take, can I test it here? Absolutely. Show. All right, so at the beginning of shift, turning it on, I'll go over it a little bit first. You can see there's a laser pointer. This would be where the top probe would hit. As you get closer to the target, the probes get closer and spread less. So you would want to be farther away. As further back you go, the farther the probes spread out. There's a light on it. Really can't see it too well. In the dark, this is a great light. Any light's a great light in the dark. It's not a huge bright light. Show you this too. So there's like a double-sided safety. It's on, off. If it's on, if I've deployed it, I've gone hands-on with somebody, I put it back in my holster, the holster shuts it off. The holster will turn it off, so you're not putting it away charged. Well, I have to get more than that. Test it. So the officers take the cartridge out, hold it away from, it's the spark bag. You'll see in a second why. You have to hold your cartridge away from it. Next generation tasers, you don't have to take the taser out, you just hit a different button. There's more buttons on newer ones. These are pretty simple. This is why I like these, what we have. So, taser's on. I'm going to squeeze the trigger. You're going to see an arc and hear it. It lasts for 5 seconds. It's 5 seconds every time. What it just did, it tested itself. It's calibrating, and there's a window on the back. You can see right now, the only thing you're seeing on there is a battery symbol, so it tells how much charge is in the battery. If something was wrong, you watch that, it'll count up to 5 seconds. When I squeeze the trigger, it counts in with 1, it's counting 5 seconds, you watch that, the battery symbol comes up, you know you're good. If something else comes up, there's an exclamation point, a warning sign, it's taken out of service, it's replaced. On the bottom, there's a spare cartridge we carry in the battery. Sometimes they're not effective only because the probes haven't hit where they're supposed to hit. This is the battery. Taser calls this the PPM, the Power Performance Module. And there's a test everybody has to take down here, and you have to label the parts and name everything correctly. The PPM. They don't call it the battery, it's just, I don't know why they do it. There's more connections for this, and inside the well, the PPM well. That's the only thing we really have to worry about as far as getting submerged. If they were to get wet, they're sealed really well. If they were to get wet, we have to take it out, dry it, make sure these are clean. And you've seen in the, front, that's where the cartridge sits. There's those 2 points there is where they arc back and forth between there. Yes. Cartridge. How it works in the cartridge. There's, like I said, there's 2 probes on 24 feet of coiled copper wire. Why we use them is if somebody's, it's one of those it's on moments. There's somebody's actively fighting, somebody's actively hurting somebody, hurting themselves in some situations. This is the stop, this is the point before deadly force. If somebody's going hands-on with somebody, this reduces injuries on both parts. Anytime you go hands-on with somebody, there's always the risk you're going to get hurt, they're going to get hurt. A fall from one of this. So when you're targeting, if somebody, you're giving directions, stop. You always give direction beforehand. If you carry one of these, you don't have to. Most people have been exposed to the shock. You tell someone, this hurts. I don't want to do this. This is like the warning's given that then it hurts. It's not a 5 seconds, but it's over. You can't control your body if the probes are done correctly, and we always want to target the upper back and hopefully the lower into the thigh. Your buttocks is okay too. We're looking for what's called neuromuscular incapacitation, NMI for short. That's, if you've ever seen the videos of the taser being effective, the person locks up and just falls over. The falling over is far less intrusive or less damage done to somebody than somebody having a slugfest or trying to wrestle somebody and bring somebody to the ground. If somebody has been incapacitated with the taser, there's that 5-second window. Officers can, if there's another support officer, can go up and handcuff that person. The NMI affects your motor skills. So basically it's hijacking your nervous system, locking it up, rigid, and you have really no control. It doesn't always work effectively though. Sometimes the spread isn't enough. If somebody, I think you use anything? can use Lieutenant
Taser.
Brady. Yeah.
Taser.
No, not like that. If somebody, if my ideal spread, so my ideal spread, my top probe is here, my second one is here ideally. He's gonna have me locked up from these 2 points between here. If my spread isn't a good spread, and there's only 2 points, maybe 12 inches apart, this part's gonna be locked up. If he is a goal-oriented, driven person, he can still actively fight through things. If it's ineffective, if there's one probe high, you can still come down below, stun him in the lower leg. That'll give you the NMI lockup. Another way, like you saw with the test, you're gonna push this on somebody. If you've seen it, it's called a drive stun. You push it into a muscle, and that doesn't give you NMI. That's what's called pain compliance. You're trying to distract them from what they're doing. And then, for the most part, that just makes somebody scoot and want to get away from it. But it does distract them possibly for enough time for someone to be taken into handcuffs and restrained. Things I want to touch on. There's the so afterwards, with the delivery of what electricity flows through it. The battery is probably comparable to a camera battery for the power it holds. How it comes out, Taser explains it all in their training videos, but 0.0012 amperes is being delivered in pulses, like these super micro pulses. So it is nothing like wall electricity or household electricity or of that sort. This is what's measured when we have evidence download. When a taser is used, the officer's taser is taken, I plug it into my computer. There's a PDF printout of the tests that happened beforehand and from the beginning of its putting in service, which these logs are getting pretty long from, I think, 2018. I can go back most people's tasers. And it shows that there's like a graph chart of this, the delivery of the charge, exposure time, and if it was effective or not. So if for some reason, like again, like if it was a goal-oriented person, you had to give the person another exposure, it would record that. And like I said, every time you activate it, it runs for 5 seconds, automatically shuts off. If you were to give another exposure, reapply the trigger, 5 seconds continuously, it would shut off unless you're holding the trigger down for whatever reason. If it's not being effective, but it's kind of, and they're scooting, but you have to have a real reason why you would do that. You have to be able to explain why afterwards you had to do that. They're a great tool. There's only a few points that winter, everybody wears a big puffy coat or a heavy, Carhartt jacket. If the probes don't meet what they want to and pierce the skin, it's always calculated. The internals are always calculating. It's trying to deliver. It's trying to figure out why it can't read itself and wants to deliver the correct charge to it. So that's the most part with if they're ineffective, or it's a bad placement, or it's just an environmental factor. There's times where we can't use them, top of the stairway. Somebody falls down the stairs or around water. Every training cycle, there's a video, what's that? Yeah, if somebody falls, gets tased, they have a pistol, he drops it, falls into the water, the officer goes in, you can see it on his body camera, he's swimming, bringing this guy up and out. People obviously pregnant, we would not give exposure to. Very frail people. Children, of course, there's no reason to. Or or extreme outlet. But these are the things like if they say don't, elderly person, I wouldn't tase an elderly person to begin with anyway, unless there was like a real, reason to it. But, and of course, there's not a lot of research done on pregnant people with tasers. I can understand why. But I'm missing the things.
You got it. I think that from an administrative standpoint, the electronic control device is very useful in what we do when we deal with combative individuals. Very few of us carry batons. They still do baton training at the police academy. In my entire career, I think I've only struck someone with a baton 4 or 5 times, but it hurts a lot and it can break bones. And this electronic control device is amazing. People understand what electronic control devices are. When you say taser, 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 most times people just give up. From an administrative standpoint, again, every time the taser is deployed, it is tested, as Sergeant Burnham told you, and he downloads all the data. The data gets attached to our use of force report. If you use an electronic control device, you must fill out a use of force report form. You must have all the data downloaded off your electronic control device. Not only that, bless you, but the Academy also keeps track of taser deployments, and we are required to complete a form, and Lieutenant Grandy sends that off to the Vermont Police Academy, and that data is collected and maintained at the Police Academy. So it's not as simple. When we first got tasers or electronic control devices, people were a little bit nervous, but it's not like that. There's so many rules that we have to follow, and there's so much follow-up, after someone uses an electronic control device, that I'm very confident as the Chief of Police and as an administrator that this is a great tool. As Detective Sergeant Burnham told you, this is a much older model. There are some newer models out there. We already talked about budgeting. It won't be this year, but at some point they will have to be replaced. And they're almost as expensive as a handgun. So we're very careful. This year, the taser training is about to begin, and everyone has to fire 2 cartridges, which we're not going to do here because it's just not safe. But everyone has to fire 2 cartridges to the tune of approximately $29 a piece. So when you think about budgeting, every officer has to fire $60 worth of cartridges in order to maintain that certification. But it's absolutely necessary. The other thing, can I just have a cartridge for a moment? So the other thing that happens, again, is from an administrative point of view, these blast doors come off, and the officers on the scene have to collect the blast doors, and inside of here is a bunch of confetti-style paper with serial numbers on it. And we collect all of that, and we maintain it as evidence. And it is associated with this cartridge, so we know which officer actually deployed their taser. And so again, there's a lot of checks and balances with the use of an electronic control device. They have been very useful to us. And I know that Detective Sergeant Burnham does not like to tell stories, but he had a very successful taser deployment when a person had been shot and wounded by a Vermont State Trooper. He refused to put the gun down, and Detective Sergeant Burnham deployed his taser, and the person put the gun down, thereby saving that person's life. So I know he doesn't talk about it often, but it did save the person's life by deploying the taser instead of a round of ammunition. Because and we've had other situations. Most recently, on a particular road in Bennington, a person wanted to take their own life and was about to plunge the knife into their body. The taser was deployed, and there's actually a very nice note from that individual thanking the police for tasing them and saving their life, and that they are getting the help that they need. So There's a lot of different uses with these. We certainly don't deploy them very often. Those are just two stories that come to the top of my mind as we're doing this very, very useful tool in law enforcement. You can ask Detective Sergeant Burnham any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for talking about this. I think it's really important to emphasize the training and how it's, I'll get the term wrong, cross-body, cross-arm, as opposed to because like here you go across there. So that's a fantastic safety measure, I think, to help from preventing, using the wrong weapon. I think it's really helpful to know that there is a digital recording or folder of usage and for the testing. So it's good to know that somebody just couldn't go out and use a taser and not have it reported. And it was very interesting, the detail with the little confetti with the serial numbers on them. So thank you. And as much as a new handgun, huh? That's a lot of money.
Yeah, they're expensive, but
Do they come with cartridges, or are the cartridges all extra?
it's a la carte.
A la carte, okay.
That comes, that's something else.
No bundles.
Right. And I think before Jason steps away, he's just going to talk to you very briefly about probe removal, so that you're not all thinking that people walk away and they have 24 feet of copper wire dragging behind them. So
I wish I had a spectrum to show you, but the probes themselves are probably 1.5 to 2 inches long. I'll call it the needle part of it, that penetrates the skin, is maybe half of that. At the tip of that, there's a barb, much like a fish hook, which holds it in place. So when somebody has an exposure, if it's not in a sensitive area, the back is fine, arms, chest, they're fine. What we do, handles gloved up, of course. You firmly grab the probe, pull it out quickly, and you have to inspect to make sure that needle or probe is still attached and it's not inside there. Once you see it, there's evidence on that too. This was used from this person. So I'm saving it. It goes back into the cartridge. The spool, the aphids, we call them confetti pieces, are called aphids, like the chief was talking about. Those are specific to the cartridge. That goes into with your cartridge, needle and glove. It gets wrapped up in your rubber gloves. That's locked as evidence. Afterwards, if it's something serious, rescue would come look at the person. If not, it's clean up the antiseptic, the Band-Aid goes over it. Anybody who's had an exposure, that's it. Wipe down something, Band-Aid, good to go. Sometimes people are more upset about the alcohol swab, wipe down than they are anything else. But we do it to make sure that people stay healthy, and it's required. When we first received electronic control devices, it was a requirement to call for rescue, but now we just do it in the field ourselves. So, and if someone does have to go to the hospital, we certainly take them there, or if they want to go check them. So, again, we don't have a lot of deployments, but the ones that we've had have been very successful.
Yes. So I kind of have a few questions that are all kind of tied together, and that was, so I guess I'll just run through real quick. Do all the officers carry them? How often are they used and they work as a deterrent versus actually having to deploy it? And then how often are they actually used? Do you know about, roughly?
Roughly, I think it would vary from year to year.
Yeah.
I could say that reviewing use of force reports, that more displays than we actually have discharge. So it is a deterrent. It's just displaying it alone. So if an officer does display it and doesn't discharge, just a display only, that still requires them to complete a use of force report. So there's more displays than there are discharges.
Okay. So that's a benefit as well.
It absolutely is. And once that display and the officer says, if you continue, it's going to get tased, the red dot comes on and people come compliant.
And do all the officers carry them? And are you trained out of the academy with this, or is that some secondary training?
So originally at the academy, we were certified.
Okay,
And then
ongoing, yep.
that's excellent.
Okay, so but new officers coming out of the academy are ready to go.
There's 2 courses that they have to take in order to carry it. They have to take a Vermont-specific CEW course, and then they have to take a manufacturer's course as well in order to even carry it. And then every year, they get recertified through an instructor.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Is there a like pre-scripted warning that all officers are given, or is it like a subjective thing, what you say before when you display the taser?
Or if the officer's going to deploy, and they're going to deploy the taser, the officer will say taser, taser, taser as they're doing it. As a warning, sometimes that's not always if it's a tactical concern or something like that, and you not given, you have to. Announcing taser is for other officers around.
Okay, so it's not required to do a verbal warning? Okay. I guess that takes care of my second question, which would be if the officer is aware that the person does not speak English, are officers given the words to use?
No.
No. Okay.
Are you finding situations like that more and more? Where you're interacting and people aren't understanding English? No. Any other questions from the board? Jean?
Kate, do you have any questions? Okay. Let's see. When you were talking about spread, is that calculated on how far away you are from the person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Does someone's physical stature, weight, muscular versus just, fat play a role in the effectiveness of it at all?
So conductivity, yes. So like for someone who's super thin, the conductivity would be less than someone with more mass.
Oh, it's that's opposite than what I thought. Okay. Yeah, interesting. And I hope the answer is no, but are these available for people to buy? Not, they are.
Yes.
Okay.
They actually now have, we can fire a single cartridge with 2 probes. They're actually making them on the civilian market where a civilian can get one that will fire back to back, boom, boom, reload. So, yeah, I mean, they're available. They're absolutely, and like down in Massachusetts, you have to have an FID card in order to have one. In Vermont, you can actually go and buy one off the shelf from someone that's selling it.
Wow.
We've come across, doing search warrants, traffic stops, searching vehicles, come across electronic control devices in people's personal possession.
I'm envisioning people like using them on their dogs and stuff.
I would hope not. But
Yeah.
How long has the Bennington Police Department used them? How many years has it been?
I believe it was right at the end of 2017-ish.
So quite a while.
Yeah, quite a while. And again, that's, we're coming in, we're going to be coming into 2025. So you kind of have to look at that and say, okay, these tasers, electronic control devices are going to be 8 years old. And I realize that, they're salesmen, but we get calls. Detective Sergeant Burke and I get calls on a regular basis telling us, oh, you need to upgrade. But, the Chevy dealer does the same thing, right?
Yeah, but-
Ford dealer, they do the same thing and tell you it's time to upgrade. But, right now, they continue to work and, we're going to stay with these for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I would think anything electronic type thing, they move so fast with improvements that I'm sure there's benefits to the new one.
The latest taser is called Taser 10. It carries 10 probes.
Wow.
So you could have 5
Yeah.
exposures on the same device.
Is that something you would replace across the board because you want everybody trained to the same one, or would you do it over time?
Yeah, it's
One
it's
time.
very similar to firearms.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want someone carrying a SIG and someone else carrying a Glock and someone else with a Smith and Wesson, right? Because we want everybody to be able to manipulate each other's weapon. And it's the same thing with the Glock.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the electronic control device. If we change,
Yeah.
then we got to switch everybody at the same time. It requires different types of cartridges.
Holsters.
And, you know, it's in different types of holsters and things like that. So that would have to be something that we would consider and change at the same time. And it's gotten to the point now where, you know, just like anything else, I mean, there's financing available and
Sure.
all that other stuff. So, yeah, you can actually lease them, that's right.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question? I believe there was a case a couple years ago where an officer accidentally fired her gun and she thought she had, I've never touched one. Can you see how that could happen? And I don't know what the situation was about where they carried it, but
That was a training failure.
I was wondering if it was a training failure.
You don't train, and, you know, that was complete training failure.
That's, yeah, I had a feeling. Okay.
I think that's important, how you were saying that it was on its crossbody from your weapon.
Yeah.
They make them for lefties too?
Yes.
Left-hands?
So-
Are they in, but,
For a left-handed person who draw from the left, it would be carried on your support side. So, yeah.
okay,
It's the same device, just different side, reverse holster.
okay,
Same device for everyone.
okay.
Ambidextrous safe.
Because okay, that's what I was wondering.
And the
Yeah.
cartridges come out with a pinch, so you have to get both sides.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
it's the same for everybody except.
I just wasn't sure about the safety, so, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Oh, Detective, sorry.
Thank you, Detective Sergeant Bruno. I was wondering, do these devices pose a greater risk to somebody that maybe has like a medical device, like a pacemaker or something like that?
So if there's knowledge of that, you would use it. The current would be conducted through, like I'm trying to say the least path of resistance to each other. But if there was, say, a pacemaker or something that was above that, that could interfere. So there's prior knowledge of someone having something like a pacemaker, some medical device, we would not do that.
But that's obviously, like, that's hard to like see, like in the muscle, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
You also mentioned that like this is like the level of force that you would go to before deadly force. I wonder, well, what level of force do you use prior to using the taser? And are there like specific guidelines or policies that determine like when you move through each level of force?
So it's considered less lethal.
Can you move closer to the, sorry.
So this is considered their less lethal scale. Of course, the use of force continuum is more like a dashboard. If you're looking at dashboard of a car, you could, but showing up is the use of force. Like our presence alone starts off, that's considered use of force. Verbal commands up to walking into a room with somebody fighting. And if you can't go hands-on, this would be, say you do verbal commands to stop. You use that. Somebody, if even someone was going to take their own life with a knife, that would be, you would use deadly force in a situation like that. This would be hopefully the stopping of that.
I think too, just really quickly, thanks for the microphone movement. I think really quickly it's important to know too, it also depends on where you are. We have other options. We can deploy a chemical agent, but we would not deploy a chemical agent in the center of Walmart. We wouldn't deploy a chemical agent in the hospital with a ventilation system because that would make a terrible mess. And so you can go to the electronic control device if need be, because it's not a lethal option. So again, it depends on where you are and what type of resistance you're receiving.
One more. Is there any, have there been reports of these devices delivering more current than they're intended to? Is the age of the electronic control device a concern with that? Have you heard of that?
No, because they're checked. Because they're checked on a daily basis, as long as they're checked on a daily basis and they're functioning within their parameters, it's good.
What's the lifespan of the device?
The battery or
The whole device? Is it just based on the battery?
well, as long as the unit's working, we haven't come across any that haven't yet. We've had them,
Okay.
that's 2017, 2017. The batteries, about a year. They go down, it's got the bars in it. And that last bar, people say, hey, my taser battery's getting pretty low. I was like, all right, we'll get a new one.
Just to go back to your question about, not working properly. That's why they have the officers tested every day before their shift, because that back window that Sergeant Vernon was talking about will tell you if there's a problem, and if a problem is detected, the unit is immediately taken out of service, and it's whether he can take care of it or it needs to go back to the manufacturer.
Thank you.
This is maybe unrelated, but that made me think about, does the Bennington Police Department use other less lethal weapons? Or is I would imagine this is the primary one, but are there other ones that are used potentially?
Yes, I mean, we have other options, such as a chemical agent that we would utilize for people that were not responsive to the police. The problem with that, quite honestly, is, throughout my career, it's basically been what we use. I mean, we went from mace to pepper spray, and it was made right here in Bennington. And but the issue is that if you use the electronic control device, once the situation's over and the person's in wrist restraints, the probes are removed, all of that takes but maybe 1 or 2 minutes. Done. Yeah. And with the chemical agent, it could be 20 to 30 minutes of decontamination, lots of water, lots of foam to make people feel better. And then you also risk the chance of contamination to an officer. And so now you're not only treating the person who is not compliant, but you're treating the officer at the same time because of splashback or what have you. And, we were just explaining this today about foam, pepper foam, because that is an option. The problem with pepper foam is if you use too much, it's like, think about shaving cream in your hand and it blows up. When the foam hits your face, it starts, or your neck area, it starts to expand. And if you don't get someone into custody right away, they could take that foam and throw it back at you. When you are, when you're tagged with an electronic control device, you really, it really takes the wind out of your sails for that full 5 seconds. And that's enough time for, an officer to get in and place someone in wrist restraints. And so it's really an effective tool, and people clean up a lot quicker, and their clothes aren't ruined from a red dye and things like that. So it's really, as I said earlier, it's an excellent piece of equipment for us here in Bennington.
Anybody who's ever been exposed to taser and OC would always pick the taser because it's done, it's over.
Yeah.
That's over with. 5 seconds are up, it's over. The contamination is yeah.
And in both tools, whether it's the electronic control device or the chemical agent, normally people say, I don't ever want to do that again. And that's not why we use them. We use them to get situations under control, because as we all know, sometimes things get out of control quickly. So And it's definitely a safe tool and a safe way to do things for us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen.
Next on the agenda, we have our community policing discussion. So is there anyone that wants to start that off on the board? Kate?
Sure, I will. I just wanted to comment on the fact that during our listening sessions, a lot of people, when we asked what the police could do to strengthen their presence or what they would like to see to help them feel safer, if you will, they all mentioned walking through the neighborhoods or walking downtown. And so now that that's beginning to happen, I know personally I've gotten comments from people who know I'm on CPARB who've said that they really appreciate that presence and that they can see the difference on how they feel from before that was occurring to now. And they feel much better. They feel more confident about their situation, whatever that might be. And so I think that that's, as we move forward into more listening sessions, be interesting to see what other ideas people have about not just walking around the neighborhoods, but what else could be done to improve the relationship between the community and the police.
Thank you. Lindsay or, no? Okay. I'm going to echo what Kate says. I've had a lot of people come up and tell me that they're happy to see the foot patrols and feeling more comfortable about that. I was also at the listening session for the select board last night, and there was a woman that was speaking quite at length about some of the crime from the drug deals. And she also spoke a lot about housing and things. But Nancy White was talking with her back and forth. And one thing that they had talked about was a public safety forum. And I know we talk about our listening sessions, and a public safety forum might be just a little bit out of our scope per se, but I'm wondering if that's something that we could consider, and I don't know, is that something that we'd have to go to the select board on? Would that be Stu? Would it be the chief? I mean, is that a possibility where we could do a public safety forum locally?
I can't imagine why that wouldn't be a possibility.
Okay. I think that would be a great community policing opportunity.
And it actually seems like this is the right forum.
Yeah.
Or the right place for that to happen, not the select board.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
What would that look like?
I'm not sure. I know Burlington did one last year, and they had their mayor, some city council, their police chief. They had the Senate Pro Tem, Phil Baruth was there. I think they had a couple people from Montpelier, and they did a very detailed public forum where people got to ask questions. And it wouldn't be certainly, for CPARB to answer the questions, but, if we could get the state's attorney's office. And I think there is a lot of public safety concerns. My personal opinion is it goes back to the legislation, because the laws are what the laws are, and that's what, the judges do as far as letting people out. And I know in my neighborhood, we're having an awful issue with one particular person trying to get into houses almost on a nightly basis. And the court keeps letting them out. So it would be very helpful, I think, based on what I listened to last night, to try to see if that would be something that we could go forward with.
Yeah, and I'm always in favor of not only doing that, but using the forum to educate.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we all know, things are always way more complicated than they seem at first blush.
I do.
So-
I do agree. I think that would be a great idea, and to include, maybe the state's attorney, but also give the police department an opportunity to present some recent data. Like, our violent crime has gone down. I think it's very easy to hyper focus on certain issues, but looking at the larger picture, and I think that would be a great discussion to have in a forum setting. And maybe CPARB's role could be helping plan that or pull that together. And I think that would be a great role for us, honestly.
I do too.
Yeah.
Anybody interested in looking into that more?
I mean, if we want to get a smaller group together, I would be interested in that. Yeah.
All right. So I will send something out to the rest of the board, and we'll see if we can get a couple people, and I will get in touch with Stu Hurd and the chief and see what the possibilities are. It is something that would take a little bit of planning. Might have to wait until January after the holidays or something to get it, see who's been elected, and
It's also, I mean, it's a huge, huge topic. I don't know if it's too huge to tackle it all. I'm thinking, children, the schools, there's so much to bite off. You might, I don't know, it would take some thinking.
I'll look up the ones that have been done around the state, and then we'll see what we can come up with and
Yep.
work on it. But I think it was a good suggestion, and I think it's worth looking into.
I do too.
So, all right.
Kelly, can I just,
Sure.
I just want to say, I support the idea. I don't want you to think that because Cam and I moved to the back, we just wanted to take it all in. I support the idea of having the forum. I think that there's locations other than the firehouse where people would feel comfortable. I know that this is our community meeting room, and I do love this room, but I think we need to find a place that's a little more centrally located. Perhaps Mr. Payne at the Union High School would let us use the auditorium at the high school. The stage is beautiful there. People would have comfy seats, not these metal things, and we might draw a better crowd and be able to open things up if we could get our state's attorney here and others. So, I mean, I think that people need to hear from the Center for Restorative Justice and all the programs that they do, and give every department head, for lack of a better term, director, administrator, whatever, an opportunity to talk about what their program is. I mean, everybody knows what the police do. We should get people like Gina Kondo and Erica Marthage and our friends from CRJ, just to name a few, so that they know what programs are available out there. A lot of people are reluctant to, I don't want to press charges on somebody have a record. Well, it doesn't always have to be like that. We have pre-charge programs that we can be involved in, and then maybe if that forum is successful, we have another forum, and we can bring in, our advocacy groups, like PAVE and UCS and others that can say what they have to offer, as people progress down the line in the law enforcement world. So I think it's a great idea. I support it, and please let Cam and I know what we can do to help put that together. But again, I think a different location would be beneficial to draw people in.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So anything else on community policing? Comments, discussion? All right. So next on our agenda is a CPARB update. So, and I'm going to read because it's long and it's too much for me to remember all at once. So with the charter review process and the suggested changes to CPARB's resolution that we've been talking about, which is on our agenda next, I thought this would be a good time to update everyone on CPARB. CPARB was established in 2022 as the result of the IACP report, the International Association of the Chiefs of Police, and work done by the Safety and Equity Task Force. Something I ask everyone to remember is that we are ordinary citizens trying to make our community better. We aren't politicians. We aren't town employees. We are 7 volunteers who got involved, and we were tasked with getting CPARB established under the guidance of our Select Board liaison. Before we had our first meeting, we had to undergo a criminal background check, and we had to pass a Criminal Justice Investigation Services, CJIS, privacy certification that's good for 2 years. We have to redo that every 2 years. For those of you in healthcare, it's kind of like HIPAA on steroids. When we first started, there were 6 of us on the board. We had a combined 186 hours of training before we could have our first meeting. We had classroom-style training, training observing the communication centers, and ride-along training with the officers. During this time, we were learning about the organizational structure of BPD. We learned about some of their policies and procedures, how the communication center works, and we also learned about President Obama's 21st century policing and a little bit about oversight. We were given a Robert's Rules of Orders book and instructed to set up the board. We had our first board meeting in October of 2022, and we elected a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary, and then we worked on establishing committees. At the time, Tom Haley was our Select Board liaison, and CPARB was trying to find out what we can, and more notably, what we can't do. We had some board member transition, and in a lot of ways, that sets us back quite a bit. New board members coming on still have to go through the background check. That took about 10 weeks with some of our newer members. After that, they have to become CJIS certified before they go through about 32 hours of training. It's a long learning curve. Our resolution states an annual report. There were many times I questioned, when do we complete the report? Because remember, we're just ordinary people, never been on a board before. Is it in June at the end of our board term year, or is it at October at the end of our first meeting year? And that question never really got answered. Now, hindsight 2020, I should have submitted the report to the Select Board anyway, and I take responsibility for not doing that. I also want to thank Stu Hurd for telling me last week that we should be doing an annual report each December. I had no idea. I was watching the Charter Committee meeting, and it was mentioned we were doing a report in December, so I checked with Stu, and apparently every committee does an annual report in December, and it goes into the town's annual report at the beginning of the year. So, lesson learned. It's an opportunity for us and an opportunity for the town to tighten up on orientation for new boards and new board members. We've had some challenges getting some data. Some of this has to do with privacy laws, computer changes, the quality control policy, and some of it has to do with other departments around the state not being overly willing to share data. And why should they? They have no idea what we plan to do with it. BPD is starting to log compliments and complaints, and we will be providing the anonymized investigative reports once they're completed. We will include this in our annual report in December. And another thing to remember is, Project Alliance, which is a group of all the local and some of the state agencies, the social services agencies, the healthcare providers, law enforcement, educators, et cetera, that was established in 2023 after we were. And some of the agencies within Project Alliance are working together and collecting some safety data through the BenStat project. They actually reported here at our meeting a couple of months ago, and we welcome them back anytime they have updates. It's my understanding that they have the access credentials and permissions we don't. They were able to go around and get permission so that they're able to share data. We don't have the credentials for some of that. In our first year, we reached out to the St. Albans Review Board and the State Police Advisory Commission, or SPAC, for some best practices and guidance from any lessons that they may have learned. St. Albans has a citizens board that does a lot with building relationships and giving the community an avenue to have their voices heard. They do a current events discussion. SPAC is a 7-member state oversight board, complete with subpoena power, appointed by the governor and requires one member to have a legal background and another to have a law enforcement background. It's been suggested we reach out to Brattleboro and Burlington citizen boards. We tried, but Brattleboro's board was not valid and has been disbanded, and Burlington does not yet have a police oversight board. It failed last year, but it's back on the November ballot this year. We've struggled with the term oversight and the confusion that causes about CPARB in the community. We are not an oversight board, and that is by the design of the select board. Personally, I agree with oversight, but I think with the state of Vermont, the size of Vermont, local police oversight should be done at the state level, similar to the State Police Advisory Commission. Our biggest challenge has been that we are just 6 or 7 ordinary volunteers trying to figure out what we can do and what we can't. I think we all volunteered for CPARB because we wanted to make Bennington better. We thought we were going to be allowed to do more than we actually could, and this has caused some bumps along the way. We really struggled with the open meeting law and that process. Although important for transparency, that law does slow things down significantly, or as we've been told, we work at the speed of government. We spent a lot of time in our trainings talking about trust and building trust. We spoke about what brought us to CPARB and how experiences that are shared with us require confidentiality, and how important it is to protect that confidentiality. And then we started our first meeting. We elected our officers, and in error, that confidentiality was broken, which led to a significant misquote in the media. That misquote broke the trust we had been building with the police officers, and it took us about a year to start to build that trust back. We also need to have the trust of the community. I don't think we're there yet, but I think the 2024 listening sessions we did around town are helping. We have been criticized for not being diverse enough, for being privileged and out of touch. And really, all I will say about that is that the town puts out an open invitation to anyone who wants to participate in any town board, and not a lot of people send in letters of interest. I'm told that the charter committee had 23 applicants, so my hope is that the select board will get several letters of interest for CPARB next spring, and I encourage people to get involved. Bless you. Thanks. CPARB does not have a budget. There have been recent conversations about bringing in consultants to guide us. Prior to our first meeting, we were fortunate enough to get several hours of training with a fantastic consultant, but that training came at a high cost to the town of Bennington. The town then had a consultant moderate and assist us with setting up our community listening session in June of '23. That project, with the training, planning, and follow-up, took up much of our year, but it also cost the taxpayers more than $10,000. With the increase in property taxes and the high cost of living, many of us felt consultants were too much of a burden to put on the taxpayers, so we have tried to bring in guests who could help us with education and conversation around policing experiences in the community without adding additional expense to the taxpayer. The chief or another representative from BPD speaks regularly at our meetings. He provides updates on staffing, recent events, what's coming up, police policies, and the why behind those policies. This past spring, Bruce Lee Clark held a training on conducting a listening session for us. We are planning to take implicit bias training when the officers of BPD do, and we're going to do this so that we can avoid adding additional cost. We've also brought in United Counseling Service, the Center for Restorative Justice, Project Alliance. Margay Diamond from Turning Point will be here next month, and Bennington Ben Stats, to educate us on what they're doing and how they're all working with BPD. Personally, Instead of consultants, I'd like to see that money put towards training and resources for the Bennington Police Department, like increasing that 24-hour-a-week liaison that we have with UCS up to 40 hours a week. We ask a lot of our police department, putting in a lot of mental health and public safety, just like we ask from some of our mental health workers to deal with a lot of public safety. So seeing them collaborate is a really great thing. In 2024, so far, we've had about 6 listening sessions about community policing and what it is. They've been around Bennington, all different locations, different days of the week and different times. Not a great attendance, but some very helpful information and comments that we're able to bring back to the chief. I think one of the challenges there is getting different groups to agree to sit down with us. There's been several that we've reached out to and we've tried to get listening sessions on, and they're just not responding back. So we're going to keep trying and continuing, but we're hopeful that we get some people to actually say, you know, yes, I know you've asked us, and yes, we would like to do that. Because CPARB is a liaison between the community and the police department. Transitioning from a traditional form of policing to a community-based form or policing takes time. It takes collaboration, education, and a lot of conversation. CPARB plans to continue with more community listening sessions, and this is one of the main reasons we are looking to move our meetings to every other month. We don't have a lot of attendance at our meetings, and very rarely do we get any public comment. But when we are out in the community, we are getting good information to take back, and the chief listens. And we see some changes. You've heard Kate talking about some of the officers playing basketball with kids after a call in their neighborhood. I think we've all heard comments about foot patrols. These are things from the community that we brought back to the police department. They seem small, but they're important pieces of community policing. Late in 2022, the Select Board and the Police Department began the Quality Control Internal Investigation and Discipline Policy. That policy was signed on March 16, 2023. CPARB was not allowed access to any complaint or compliment information that came in before that policy was signed, and that was by the design of the Select Board. Additionally, that procedure includes Section 2D. Quote, "This policy does not apply to minor misunderstandings on the part of the complainant, which can be quickly resolved with an explanation of Vermont state law, town ordinance, and/or department policy," unquote. They should still be documented, but the policy does not require that. So this brings us to the question of what happens when CPARB receives a comment. If someone should send a comment or a complaint through the CPARB comment link, they receive an acknowledgement email that their comment was received. Their comments range from school board issues, agenda links, land use boundaries, dog-related comments, and DMV issues. We do ask if they have filed a formal complaint, and if not, we encourage them to file a formal complaint, because doing so results in a comprehensive investigation that will ensure that everyone's rights are being protected. I send them the link to the citizens' complaint form, and I also send them the policy outlining the process. If applicable, I follow up with the chief and/or Stu to make sure someone is aware of the concern and gets back to the person. That is really all we are allowed and authorized to do. Compliments are not as formal. They can come in many ways, but filing the formal complaint is the first step. And per the our select board liaison and the town manager, we're not allowed to actually take those complaints. But once it's filed, it is recorded, and this starts a thorough documentation investigation. And when that documentation investigation has been completed, as you have seen this evening, the chief reports to CPARB on that. So prior to tonight, we had 2 complaints, and we've had at least 6 compliments. Some of them are lost in inter-office mail. I apologize. I did not realize we had an inter-office mailbox. We will get those located for the next meeting so that we can get those out there. But I just wanted to take a few minutes and update everyone on where we were with CPARB, because there is a lot of confusion about us out in the community. And we really do appreciate the questions, the comments, the involvement, and we think if we change our meetings to every other month, we'll be able to get out into the community and get more of that. So that was my update. Again, I apologize for not giving reports. I take full responsibility for that. And if anybody has any questions or comments on anything I've said, I welcome that now. Make the December one shorter?
No.
No. All right. Thank you. All right. So if there's no questions on the update, next up on the agenda is the CPARB Future Planning, Boards, Goals, and Activities. We have an updated resolution that was sent out, marked up based on what we had discussed at the last meeting. And Kate, before I turn this over to you, I just have one suggested change on it, and that is on the portion about the annual meeting or the annual report. I know I had asked last month to have it put in for June because I thought that was the end of the board year, but being that every other board commission does it in December, I think we should be consistent and it should be December.
And where is that?
It's in here somewhere.
Is it,
Let me get the line number.
Annual summary,
Yeah,
line 1 on page 3.
line 1 on page 3.
oh, I see it.
In December. I think we should just add in December.
Summary of data trends relating to
So that,
police training in December. Okay. In
is that
December.
the right one? Yeah. No, that's not the right one.
Data trends, nope.
Should you add the reason being so it can be included in the annual report?
An annual summary, that's an annual summary. Okay, well, we'll go through this and
Yep.
hopefully it'll pop out at us as we're, rather than us all looking.
Okay. So I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, okay. So just to recap a bit, we decided to revise the resolution, the original resolution, because it didn't have any content on community policing. It only used the words, those two words, community policing, one time in the entire document. And there was no explanation of what community policing was, what it wasn't, or any of that. And so in terms of our activities, our goals, there was no mention of that. So this is an effort to begin to include that in all of our activities and our goals. Okay, so I'm gonna, this constitutes then the second reading of this, all right? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to read the original of each section that's changed and then tell you how it's different. So the first item is on line 3. The Bennington Select Board, through its authority, hereby establishes a town board to be known as the Community Policing Advisory Review Board to provide meaningful involvement in safety, equity, and community policing efforts. This will be changed to the Bennington Select Board, through its authority, hereby establishes a town board to be known as the Community Policing Advisory Review Board, CPARB, period. By supporting the problem-solving and organizational strategies embodied in the philosophy of community policing, it is expected that CPARB will act as a liaison between the community, the Select Board, and the Bennington Police Department to foster safety, trust, and equity in law enforcement. The next change is under the goals. Excuse me. Sorry, my voice is scratchy tonight. In partnership with the Select Board, the Town of Bennington and the Bennington Police Department, and the CPARB has the following goals. So this is a revision, this is a new one, actually. Recommend Bennington Police Department policies and procedures to support and ensure a culture of community policing. The second one is a revision. The original was recommendations on police department training and community collaboration efforts. It's changed to recommend police department training with a focus on crime prevention strategies and techniques consistent with community collaboration efforts. The third one is struck entirely. It was recommendation and review of proposed new and existing Bennington Police Department policies and procedures. A new one was added. This is the fourth one. This was changed significantly. Review of anonymized data on complaints and compliments for the purposes of identifying problems, patterns, and positive actions. It was changed to recommend positive actions that reduce complaints and support trust, transparency, and accountability. The next one was changed significantly. The original was analysis of town-wide safety data with a focus on equity and areas of need. It was changed to identify safety concerns and areas of need within the community. The next one had some revisions. The original was comparison of local data to other Vermont municipalities, state and national trends. It was changed to compare local data to other comparable size Vermont municipalities and state and national trends in community policing efforts. The next one was originally fostering of collaborative efforts within the community to hear all voices. It was changed to foster collaborative efforts within the community to hear all voices. The final goal, this isn't the final goal. Yeah, it is the final goal. Remains the same. Work with the select board and town staff, including BPD, to promote learning on community safety and equity issues. Before I get into activities, does anybody have any questions on any of that or changes on any of that?
No.
No? Okay. So, activities. In collaboration with the BPD, the CPARB will, and this is a new one, actively engage members of the community and other relevant groups in supporting a culture of inclusion, trust, and accountability in crime prevention through the use of listening sessions, attendance at community events, and other relevant activities. So that was a new one added. The next one was not changed. It was review required training for the BPD and outcomes and make recommendations on additional areas for training, such as de-escalation, fair and impartial policing, verbal and nonverbal communication skills, implicit bias, and officer discretion. So there's no change to that one. The next one was changed. And this is like so many changes here. I think it was to develop and analyze a database, develop a database for analysis of anonymized compliments and complaints to be utilized in complaints, period. We changed it to develop and analyze develop and analyze data of anonymized compliments and complaints to be utilized by the CPARB for the purposes of identifying problems, patterns, and positive actions. The next one was slightly changed. It was originally analysis of analysis of safety and traffic data and identification of areas of need. It was changed to an analysis of town-wide safety and traffic data with a focus on equity and identification of areas of need. The next one was not changed at all. review existing collaboration with local organizations and agencies and make recommendations on ways to strengthen and develop additional working relationships between BPD and the community. This last one was cut entirely because it's embodied in other activities. It is to develop a database for analysis of automatized compliments and complaints to be utilized by the CPARB for the purposes of identifying problems, patterns, and positive actions. Any changes on that one? Okay. Under meetings, on page 3 of, it's the changes on line 19. CPARB will meet every other month. The original is CPARB will meet monthly in person or in a virtual setting. We changed that sentence to the CPARB will meet every other month in person or in a virtual setting. We have a question on line 30 on page 3. It asks that members must be Vermont residents. We have a member who is not a Vermont resident, so I don't know what that means. If we have a member who is not a Vermont resident.
I think I would just strike the last sentence.
Okay, so it's okay to do that, all right. Then that's what we'll suggest, okay. And I don't believe.
I mean, you may get pushback, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, this is just our recommendations to send to you to add. Nothing is binding. It's just what we're going to recommend to give to
Well,
you on it.
and it says resident, town of Bennington, Old Bennington, North Bennington, or someone who works
Yeah.
or has demonstrated
So we'll just
significant
take that
That's right.
time here. So I think there's still a threshold to meet.
Yeah, that's, I think, why we were questioning whether or not we needed that last statement. Okay, and I'm sorry, but I did not catch where
Yeah, I think it's just that annual summary there. It's
of data and trends related to police.
so it should just be in the December one with that.
So do we want to change that?
I think
Okay,
it should
so
provide an annual, just a summary. I don't know about data and trends relating to police policy.
Where are you? I missed it.
Top of page 3.
We're trying to find the statement that it says we have to do an annual report.
It's in here, or you think it should be in here?
Well, we thought it was in here.
There's been a lot of
Well,
A lot of discussion about
Provide an annual
that.
summary of data and trends, so I would maybe just an annual report relating.
You should say to provide an annual report, which will be published along with other boards' reports in the annual report prepared by the town of Bennington at the end of each calendar year.
And it's for town meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay. So questions, comments? We have to wait for Jeff if we're going to vote on it.
Jeff had to leave and she's talking.
Oh, so we don't even have a
So we
quorum
can't
anymore.
vote
We
again.
don't have a quorum anymore.
He left, like, he's not coming back?
No.
Oh, darn.
Gotta call.
Okay, well, I guess we get to do this again.
We will have a third reading in November and try to get it to the CPA in December.
I don't think you need to go through what you just did again.
Okay. Okay, we could just do it as is. All right. Okay, with the addition of this statement that the chief offered on the annual summary.
Okay.
Okay. All right,
Vote on it in November.
yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah. Darn.
All right,
know.
so,
Okay.
so we have no quorum. Can we continue with the meeting?
Does anything need to be voted on?
I think,
Just have the listening sessions.
Yeah.
If nothing needs to be voted on, you can have any kind of discussion you want.
okay.
So next on the agenda is the listening sessions.
I did want to report that I talked to the staff at CRJ the last couple of days. I've had a couple of conversations with them. And they're suggesting that they have an after-school program for teens, the Lounge. And they meet Monday through Thursday, 2:30 to 4:30. And they are happy to work with us to advertise, to have kids there, teens there. And they're teens in grades 7th through 12th.
Perfect.
So that's one population that we've not had a chance to really get any information from at all. So they were excited about that. And I suggested the first Thursday of November, which is November 7th. And that gives them, before we get into any kind of holiday stuff, right? It's after Halloween. And so we would just, they're going to talk to their other staff, make sure that date works. And then they'll do the advertising to their kids.
Okay.
To do that. And we would pay for the pizza and drinks. So we'd need to talk to Stu about getting funding for that. But they'll let me know how, what to order, or maybe they would order and then we just pay them.
What was the time of day for that?
It's Monday through Thursday, 2:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon. So it's good for the kids.
Good for the
right?
kids, yeah.
It's good for kids. It's not necessarily good for anybody who's working.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but several of us are retired or partially retired, so hopefully we'll be able to do that.
I just checked my schedule because I know November I said would be better, and that is a day in the afternoon that I have free.
Oh,
So
cool. Great.
So the two of you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I should hear back from staff. I don't know if I'll hear back from them tomorrow, but certainly beginning of next week. Because we'll need to move forward on advertising at the schools. So, okay.
Where's the location? Did you mention
It'll be
that?
at CRJ.
CRJ, okay.
CRJ, and they've got a room that they call the Lounge.
And that's right on Main Street, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
that would be good.
Right near the gift garden.
Right.
Actually, yeah.
Yep.
I know Scott Frost had to leave, but I know he's been working with GBEX.
Yes.
So they're open. We'll be able to do a session over at GBEX. I know Vicky's been going to the community cafe. She's been continuing that. I reached out trying to find some landlords, but there isn't an organization for landlords. That was one of the suggestions in last month's meeting. So I don't know if it's something we want to try to consider, maybe trying to find a room and just sending out. and
Yeah,
doing a
maybe,
Public session for.
Could we, I wonder if Brock they might have a list of landlords or some type of like connection that way. They could maybe help that, or even, that probably would work.
I also spoke with Scott Richmond. He's going to check into doing something with the fire department. And we talked briefly with the chief about the suggestion last month with doing a listening session with the officers. And that might be a little bit challenging to do in a group, but we can certainly talk to the officers one-on-one when we see them around town or something like that. Any other? Okay, we'll keep the same questions, pretty much.
Would it, I know we had a good turnout with business owners. Would it be worth kind of circling back to that as well? Yeah, I was thinking
Go back
so
to
too.
beans and bagels.
Yeah.
And try to do that.
What about someone connected with the school system? Teachers or, I don't know.
We could try maybe the teachers union.
Or glom on to, if they have professional training days,
Yeah.
and they may be booked solid,
Yeah.
you know.
reach out and ask them. So, all right, any other suggestions or comments on it for right now? Okay, all right. Next is upcoming agenda items. And next month, Margay Diamond will be here from Turning Point. And she'll be talking about some of the outreach that they do, their interactions with the police department, and some of the other work that's going on around the community. And then we will have a vote on the suggested changes to the resolution, and hopefully we can get that to the select board sooner rather than later. Any other agenda items anyone else would like to see?
Full agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Announcements? I don't have any real announcements other than keep an eye out. We will be following up on that public safety forum. And
Of course, Harvest Fest is.
and
this
Harvest
weekend.
Fest is Saturday. There's also the BBC is doing a historic preservation walk at 1 o'clock on Pleasant Street. The Riverwalk Committee is doing the Unsung Heroes with Jack Rossiter Munley and Lorraine Donatelli. Hopefully I have that right. Getting that award, and then also candidates are there for the walk, so if you have any questions, you can join that. And Trunk or Treat is coming up next week on the 26th, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some other stuff.
Let's not forget it's October.
Oh, it's October.
Right in the lobby of the police department, and we want to see that filled and emptied as many times as we can before the end of October. Also, Drug Take Back is the last Saturday of October, and we'd like to tip the scales on that. So we just want people to know, on the police side, we do have 2 drug take-back boxes at the Bennington Police Department, and people should bring any and all of their unwanted medications to the police department for proper disposals. Just a reminder, we don't take liquids. And we don't take syringes. Syringes should be placed in a sturdy plastic container, capped, and thrown in the regular trash. Please don't bring those to the Bennington Police Department. And those are a couple things that we have going on that we're participating in. And again, if you've got a bunch of prescription medication laying around, whether it was yours, a spouse's, a pet that's not being used anymore, we'll take that and dispose of it properly, because we don't want that in the landfill.
Can it even be over the counter?
Yes,
Yeah.
we take it all.
Yeah, over the counter too.
Okay. The expired stuff, we'll take it all.
And just because I get things mixed up a lot. I heard on the meeting today that Bennington was leading the state in this program, or what was that I heard, something?
So, yes, so the Bennington Police Department takes a huge lead in drug take-back for the county. Lieutenant Grandy makes arrangements for drugs to be picked up from law enforcement agencies in Bennington County, and we transport those to a undisclosed location in Vermont. It's a long ride, and it's something that we do, and we pick up everyone else's medication and get it there. We also participate on a regular basis with the hospital. The hospital hit a milestone and has now collected over 3,000. Oh, that's not, it was public information in the meeting today. Oh, they're doing a big press release on
Don't
that.
steal their thunder.
Skip that, sorry about that. We participate in that. When they call us, there's no way to get into their drug drop box without the police, and we can't get into it without them. And we're so happy that when they did the renovations at the hospital, that they kept the drug take-back box, and that's as far as I'll go with it.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Jacob Matz, Charter Review Committee. We meet on Fridays at 3 p.m. at the town offices. We're meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow, we are slated to have a more in-depth conversation on the charge of evaluating potential changes related to CPARB. So I want to make you aware of that. I think I missed my opportunity before, if you'll allow me some latitude to make kind of a comment. On a personal note, not as a member of the Charter Review Committee, but related to my work there, I understand that being involved in municipal government is often a thankless job. On the Charter Review Committee, our charge is to evaluate potential changes to improve the operation of town government. That includes the CPARB board. And CPARB was one of the groups that we were asked to look at specifically. So clearly that has brought a spotlight to the work that you've all been doing. And I am so thankful and appreciative of the work that you've done here. Like I said, I know being involved in town government is often a thankless job. And like you, I'm a volunteer in this capacity. And so I appreciate that. And I think you've done a great job with the tools that you've been given, right? I think it's really sad that you feel the need to sit there and offer justifications about the work that you've done and maybe the work that you haven't done. That really disappoints me, right? One of the criticisms that you mentioned about this board that have come from the community has come from the NAACP. I'm sorry, not the NAACP, I misspoke, from the ACLU of Vermont, who's described this board as being a purely symbolic process. And I think this town deserves better than that. It's really disappointing for me to see that you have not been empowered to accomplish a lot of these goals that have been set out for you. I don't think personally that rests with this board. But I do think that this town deserves better than a symbolic board. I think that there's a real need for this type of group in this town, and I hope we can work together to get there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie, and I hope so too, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. I can't speak for the rest of the board members, but personally, a meeting at 3 o'clock on a Friday for somebody who works is really hard to get to. But I do try to watch them, and I think there is a lot of confusion, and I'm sorry that you think it's sad that I reported what I did today. I do think there's a lot of misinformation. I think there's a lot of assumptions on power that we don't have, that we should have. Personally, and I'm not going to speak for the rest of the board, but personally, I think the whole power thing is why we got into trouble in the first place and why we have a lot of the issues that we have in the country that we have now. And I think that you are entitled to your opinion, and I respect your opinion. I don't necessarily agree with it. I personally don't think that the way the board is set up, we should be doing anything with oversight or subpoena power. I know there's a lot of people and a lot of organizations that think that we should, and I know there's some organizations that don't really want to work with us until we do. And they have their agendas and their reasons for that, and I respect that. But you know that we can't make organizations work with us. You know, we've reached out to you about listening sessions. So, you know, maybe we are symbolic in nature, and yes, Bennington probably, deserves better than what they've got, but we are the people that stepped up to volunteer for the last couple of years or last year to try to get everything done. And if people are dissatisfied, then I welcome the feedback and the opportunity to come through. But I do think, this is my personal opinion, I do not think that CPARB belongs in the charter. I think if it goes into the charter, we're stuck with it the way it is. As you can tell from what Kate has been working on and what we've been reading, we've been trying to make some adjustments to make us fit more to what we're doing. And if working on training and education and communication and collaboration and trying to educate the community on things at the policies and the procedures and what the police department's doing, I'm proud of that. You know, and if it's sad and Bennington deserves better, well, a lot of times, and I've listened to your meetings, and I'm not really sure that a lot of it's accurate. I think a lot of it, you know, just not knowing what you don't know. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. I would prefer Kate to take chair. I think she does a whole lot better of a job at it. But again, you know, you've got to try to get the volunteers to step up. And there was a lot of people that just don't want to be on this board. And there's organizations that don't really want to work with this board. So what do? You just keep going month after month, and you try to educate, and you try to get the communication, and you try to get out into the community, and you try to talk. And then when somebody does come up and they stop and they say something positive, it's nice. It's not sad. So your opinion, significantly different than mine. I appreciate what you do. I do not believe that CPARB belongs in the charter. I do not believe that we should have any oversight. We are not trained from it. And in my personal experience, based on what we went through the first year on the board, there was not enough put into that to prevent some of that, like abuse of power. So thank you very much. If there's no other comments,
You can't even adjourn the meeting?
no, I can't. I can't adjourn the meeting, but the next meeting will be November 21st at 6 p.m. in this room.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.